All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Prime Voyager class Predaking. Now, I should say this is the second Voyager class Predaking from the Beast Hunters line from Transformers Prime. The first one was kind of like I guess a more quote unquote proper Voyager, but it had some, like mech techie type gimmicks to it. He had like a three-headed dragon mode. I think that was his mech tech weapon, is it like, gave him two extra heads. And I never really thought it looked like an amazing toy. And this guy came out, which is essentially, there was a period of time in Transformers Prime where they were sort of experimenting around with like doing kind of upscaled versions of the cyberverse toys, the cyberverse commander and warrior class. Is that what they were called? Warrior class? I don't know. But the basically the little guys that they had started doing in Dark of the Moon. And yeah, Predaking I think is one of the more successful of those. They did like start doing the guys for Abominus, but then just didn't finish them, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, so he's essentially an upscaled version of the much smaller kind of cyberverse commander class version of Predaking, just with some added, like robust joints and some different sculpting. But the engineering is more or less the same, at least as I understand it. I don't have that toy. This is the only version of Prime Predaking that I have. But yeah, no, he's a really fun toy. Definitely a little bit lacking in the paint department, and I would say, yeah, I don't know how well he really translates as like a toy version of the screen character of Prime Predaking, but just as a toy in and of himself, he is pretty fun. I definitely think he does the like dragon head sculpt the best out of any of the versions, or any of the larger versions rather, of Prime Predaking. He definitely does look a bit more like the animation. He's got some fun detail on him. He's got, like I said, he's a little bit lacking in paint. He's got some weird like clear plastic in places for some reason, and he's obviously, his tail becomes a big sword here, which is pretty easy to tell. He's got nice big translucent wings. He's notably very large for a Voyager, even from the time. Like, he definitely felt like a, just because he used that more simplified engineering, he was allowed to be just kind of a lot bigger, and I think it really works for him. So, he's not the most articulated thing in the world, especially in Dragon mode. Like, in this mode, his head can bob up and down there. A lot of people think that it like stops here, but you can, compress it a little bit further down there. The front legs will of course just become his arms, so he's got nice, really satisfying ratchet joints for the hip there, and then also goes out to the side like that. He's got a bicep swivel, or I guess in this mode a thigh swivel. Again, clicky joints at the knee there, which doesn't go a full 90, but and then the feet can kind of tilt forward and back because they are, kind of unfortunately just attached to the robot mode hands. But honestly, he camouflages it well, like better than a lot of figures do who have that sort of weird aesthetic. The back legs here are not going to be his robot mode legs, so they're pretty much just solid pieces here that swivel forward and back, and they can kind of tilt in and out for transformation. The tail, you can pretty much just bob up and down, nothing other than that. And then the wings here have one joint right here where they can swing in and out, although after a certain point it kind of breaks up the sculpting there, and then they can hinge up and down like that. So, if you just want him to look like kind of a big imposing dragon, he does that well, but he can't really do anything more. Like, he can't really do any like flying poses or anything like that, since his neck doesn't tilt any further down from this, so it always looks a little bit silly, even if you've got like his, it's like, yeah, yeah, I don't know about that. But so he mostly just is good at standing there and looking imposing, but he does that pretty well, I think. Now, because I think it's a little bit, in my canon display, right, I don't have multiple characters that have the name Predaking, and the Predaking I prefer is obviously the G1 style Predaking, who's the combiner. So I had this guy on my shelf for the longest time as actually a version of Onyx Prime, because I think he makes a pretty good version of that character. Like, the colors are kind of similar to how he showed up in the Covenant of Primus. He's got a bestial alt mode that isn't an earth animal, so I feel like that works pretty well, and he's just like big and imposing. So I would have been pretty satisfied with him as my version of Onyx Prime. But we of course have gotten the announcement and pre-order of the new leader class one, which I do think is a lot more obviously intentionally Onyx Prime, so that one is going to be replacing him when he comes in. But still, he's a pretty cool figure. Now he does come with this little pistol as well for some reason, just as an extra gun. It's a little friction fire missile there, which doesn't work super well, but it's kind of neat. It's got like sort of like little dragony sculpt on the missile there, which is kind of interesting. And then in terms of storage, you can just like plug it onto the tail here, which looks a little bit silly, but he's got so much stuff that it feel like it kind of fairly camouflages. You plug it the other way too. It looks a little worse that way, but I don't really think he needs a little pistoly handgun, so I kind of put this off to the side. Oh, it's like, why is that looking wrong? Because it wasn't plugged in right. So I kind of just put this off to the side, but it's something that he comes with. And then obviously he's got his sword, which just becomes the tail here. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, just for a standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. And yeah, I feel like that like size really works. I mean, he's even a little bit bigger than that in the show, I feel like, in his alt mode, coming pretty much face to face with Prime Megatron, but still, I feel like that is a pretty good scale there. Here he is with Studio Series Grimlock, just so you can see what he looks like with another kind of lizardy kind of guy there. And then in that same vein, for another dragon comparison, here he is with Legacy Transmetal 2 Megatron, although they don't really fit on screen together. But yeah, I feel like they're pretty comparable in size, even though he's a Voyager class and he's a leader class. And then last but not least, here he is with the other Prime Predacons that I own. Oh, I'm missing. Oh, he fell. Okay. I was like, where did Skystalker go? He fell onto the floor because he's not a great figure who can't stand up very well, even in his four-legged dragon mode. But yeah, that's what he looks like with the three of them. They're a neat little group here. Obviously these guys didn't show up in the show. I mean, these molds showed up in the show as Skylynx and what's his name, Darksteel, but they didn't even really look that much like them, to be honest. But I feel like they make for a fun little group of dragon transformers here. But yeah, to get onto transformation, he is, again, like I said, fairly simple. He doesn't have a lot of moving parts, but I honestly think that that's okay for him. First thing you want to do is just kind of separate the legs a bit, just so you can take the sword and unpeg it there. Now, the sword is like cast in this orange plastic, and then this bit is painted black. So the pegs that actually attach have definitely gotten some paint worn off of them, which is not the end of the world, but it is kind of silly that the pegs are painted there. But whatever, still a cool looking sword. And then we can take the legs here, and they will untab from the back, unfold at the knee just like that, again on these really nice ratchet joints here. And then we can take the foot, fold it down, and then take the dragon leg, fold it down, and then fold it into the side, and it will just tab in like that. The tab is not a super strong connection. It's mostly just a guiding spot, but it helps kind of fill out the leg a little bit, even if it is still pretty hollow in the back there. Then for the arms, they pretty much just fold them down and then flip up the claws to flip out the robot mode hands. And then you literally just take the dragon head and kind of fold it back, and then fold the whole thing onto his back. And then we can bring his wings down, and then we'll have to adjust the camera here. One sec. And then, of course, last but not least, the only thing left to do is turn his head around. And yeah, there we have Transformers Prime Predaking in his robot mode. And yeah, he looks really cool. Obviously, like I said, he's not like a perfect adaptation of the character from the show or that CG model, which really, honestly, none of the Predaking toys that came out at the time were. It'd be nice to maybe get a new version of that guy eventually, but I'm kind of fine with him just being left in the past in favor of a more G1 style Predaking. But yeah, no, he looks really cool just as his own character. He's definitely lacking quite a bit of paint, and most of his body is made up of this like clear brownish gray plastic here, which is a little bit weird, but he still looks pretty cool. And again, I feel like it works pretty well as like an Onyx Prime. In terms of articulation, the head is just on a swivel, and it's definitely a little bit hollow in the back there, but whatever. Shoulders, of course, have the same articulation as they did before, just really, really nice ratchet joints there, which have held up super well. The wrists can kind of bend down just for transformation. Nothing at the waist. His hips can go forward, back, out to the side. Again, all with that nice ratchet joint there. He's got a thigh swivel there. A little over 90 degrees of bend at the knee, which is nice. And then the feet really can't do much. They can kind of tilt back a little bit, but it doesn't really adjust the overall footprint, since part of his foot kind of is the back foot of the or the back leg of the dragon mode. So nothing really in terms of ankle articulation there. And then you can still, adjust the wings however you like. I like to leave them kind of swept in the back here. And then, he obviously he still has like a dragon head kind of hanging out in his back here, which is not accurate to the show, but whatever. In terms of his weapons here, even though his hands are sculpted this way, he does have like an actual little section here where he can hold stuff. So you can give him the little gun there, or you can give him the big sword. And this is the one joint that I wish was a little bit stronger, is like the foot joint for dragon mode, because it really can't hold up the weight of the sword very well, unfortunately. In terms of storage for this stuff, there's really nothing you can do with the gun other than like plugging it onto the sword. And then for the sword, there's no official storage. What I have found that you kind of can do is just sort of like use one of these spikes here to hook it over like the cavity that his neck is, and there's even kind of a little slot there, which I doubt was intentional, but you can kind of hook that over and then kind of bring this down and then hook the bottom section over his dragon head there, and that works pretty well. Obviously, it's got it when it has gravity in its favor, it works, and otherwise, it's not a very strong connection. But it always works decently well enough for me, because he's got to have storage for the sword since it's literally part of his alt mode. It's again a little annoying that he doesn't by default have storage for it, because it would have been pretty easy to just like put a port on one of the wings or something like that, just so you could peg it in like that. But it just wasn't really a priority at the time, unfortunately. But that storage works for me, even if it's not an official thing. And then again, there's really because the sword is plugged on that way, there's nothing you can really do with the gun other than just like toss it up there. But I leave the gun off to the side anyway. But in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see just how tall he gets there. Definitely just towering over an average size deluxe there. And then here he is with Studio Series Grimlock. So you can see, again, Voyager leader class. He's even a little bit taller than he is. Obviously, this guy's got a lot more bulk and mass, but, he does kind of stack up with him. And likewise, here he is again with Transmetal 2 Megatron, who he's also a little bit taller than. But, so again, works as an Onyx Prime. I'm excited for that new one, but, this guy still, I feel like, kind of hits that mark if you don't like, for whatever reason, the new one that's coming out. And then last but not least, here he is with, or maybe least, honestly, with the other Transformers Prime Predacons that I have, which, none of them are like amazing figures. Ripclaw is cool, but these two are but honestly, I feel like out of all of them, he's probably the most solid overall figure of the four of them. And there's a few other ones that I don't have, like the Laserback or Vertebrake or whatever that guy was called. And there might be one or two more, I actually don't remember, but either way, they look pretty cool together as a team. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. He's a really fun figure who's not an amazing adaptation of the character he's supposed to be, but just as a toy in and of himself, I really like the whole idea of him being just this like massive clicky figure that isn't overly complex. He doesn't have a ton of paint, but he's just really fun, honestly. Just a really nice, big, simple figure, and he's a lot of fun to mess around with. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday and Thursday. Without further ado, here we have Transformers Prime Voyager class Predaking.